Hello, team. Okay, so this is kind of a brief overview of our stuff that we're looking for with central idea and figurative language. Okay, so this is to kind of help you as you're going through the worksheet and completing that. So the first thing we're going to do is just review what a central idea is. So it's a message or an idea that's the focus of the piece. So, for instance, when we think about reading the Odyssey last year together, a central idea of the Odyssey might be that, like, we can learn about ourselves through taking a journey. Okay. So we know something is a central idea if there are examples of it in the whole piece, if there are a lot of supportive details, and if there is one clear meaning or lesson. But if it's something like the Odyssey or a book like The Perks of Being a Wallflower, it might actually have more than one central idea, and that's okay. So here's what you're going to do on your worksheet. We're going to just kind of practicing looking at evidence and then trying to figure out what the central idea is. So you're going to go to your worksheet and we're going to do question number 1 together. Okay, so when we look at these details under question number 1, so the first thing we see is Charlie walks in on Patrick and Brad kissing. Charlie tells Sam and Patrick what Aunt Helen did to him. Patrick and Sam notice that Charlie writes a lot and they give him a typewriter for Christmas. And Patrick and Sam come to visit Charlie in the hospital and don't treat him any differently. Sorry for the typo. So take a second, think about what you think that central idea might be. Okay, so you may have come up with a couple different things, and we don't have to have all the exact same wording here, all right? But one of the central ideas that you may have come up with is that a true friend recognizes who you are and accepts that, right? So we can see that happening in both ways in these details. Charlie accepts that Brad and Patrick are gay, and Patrick and Sam accept Charlie because they don't flip out when they find out what Aunt Helen did, and they don't treat him any differently when he's in the hospital. They treat him exactly the same as he's always been. Okay, so now go ahead and pause the video and you can work through the rest of the questions on this page, questions 2 through 4. Okay. All right, so now let's talk about figurative language. So I want to remind you, figurative language includes imagery, similes, and metaphor. So a quick rundown of each of those. Imagery is when we're describing something. So soft, the sunlight shone brightly, her hair was golden and curly, and whatever else that might look like. Her skin was the color of a coffee bean. Whatever it is that's like describing the thing that you're seeing. Okay. And it could be simple as like the wallpaper was blue and white. Okay. A simile is comparing two things, and it's specifically using the words as or like. If it doesn't have those two words, it is not a simile. And if it's not comparing two things, it is not a simile. All right. So examples of that might be the river is like a snake, or he is as hairy as a monkey, or he is built like a mountain. It's like a big dude, right? So if it uses like or as and it's comparing one thing with the other. A metaphor is very, very similar. It's very easy to get these mixed up, but a metaphor uses the word is. Sometimes it might be are, was, were, okay? But it does not use like or as when it's comparing the two things. It's basically saying that those two things are the same, okay? So if it uses like or as to compare the two things, you know it's a simile. If it doesn't, it's probably a metaphor, Okay, so if we're going to take one of our similes from before, the river is like a snake. If we wanted to make that a metaphor, we would say the river is a snake. Okay, or another example might be the lake is a mirror. We're saying those two things, same thing. Okay, so now on your worksheet, you're going to go to this section here, 5 through 10, and you're going to try to figure out what the bold statement is, right? So is it imagery, is it simile, or is it a metaphor? So let's do question 5 together. When we look at this, it says, her eyes glistened with tears. Okay, is that imagery? Well, it's describing something, so maybe let's just double check everything else. So I know a simile uses like or as. Does like or as exist there? No, but it might be a metaphor. So is it comparing two things? No, it's not. So it's just describing what's happening. I know that's imagery. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and write in that piece. Okay. All right. So you can go ahead and do questions 5 through 10. All right. And then I just want to remind you, for questions 5 through 11, we're going to reverse. So before, I've been giving you the imagery or the simile or the metaphor, and now you're going to generate that. So for each image that you see, you're going to do one of each, one simile, one metaphor, and one piece of imagery. Okay? And remember, you can go back and watch some of the video. You can go back and look at the slides to give yourself a refresher. You can even look at other videos like on YouTube and stuff to help you. Okay? So just make sure you're using all the resources that you can to help you figure this out.